Now to read this chart, I'm going to read all the phases of it. There's 1 through 8. Explaining direct and retrograde rotation. Number 1. In newborn planets, dimensions of ecliptic and magnetic bases are same as parents. Number 2. Magnetic bases contract toward pole and ecliptic contracts toward plane of equator. Number 3. Magnetic bases rapidly disappearing in pole and ecliptic revolving in plane. Number 4. This is the maximum charge, the bisexual position. Contraction ceases, planets' equators coincides with solar, and expansion begins. Magnetic bases and ecliptic expansion disappear in pole and plane. Number 5. Expansion well underway in this position, which is approximately that of the Earth. Number 6. Magnetic bases and ecliptic expanding and nearly meeting. Number 7. In this position, bases and ecliptic meet. This is the position of Uranus. Number 8. This is the position of Neptune, opposite to that at birth. Discharge. Jupiter is well on the way toward turning its poles upside down. Its rotation is at a considerable inclination to the solar equator though still direct. And then it shows one that says east to sun. Neptune is well on the road to dissolution. Its south pole controls its minimum of charge, which is so slight that its rotation has become retrograde. And then it shows Uranus. Uranus has more than half tipped over. Its rotation and that of the satellites is between direct and retrograde, leaning toward the latter. All masses rotate on their axis and revolve around their gravitative centers in the same direction. The apparent contrary effect is due to change of position only. And that is what is on this page, explaining the direct and retrograde rotation. Now we have another chart here explaining acceleration and deceleration of rotation. And I will read what's on the bottom of this. The electropositive force of attraction pulls inward from within. The electronegative force of repulsion pushes outward from within. Contraction and expansion from within are two opposing forces, one battling for the slow rotation of a centripetal force and the other for the fast rotation of centrifugal force. All masses begin their accumulation with generative preponderance. It is the contractive pull from within a vortex which causes mass to form because of the increasing attractive pull of charging bodies. It is the expansive thrust spirally away from a vortex which causes mass to decompose because of the increasing repulsion of discharging bodies. This is a chart illustrating the opposite forces of gravitation and radiation conquering and being conquered by sequentially composing and decomposing mass. And now to begin where we left off before. Consider the mechanics of man as a comparison of those of the solar system. In man's motor engines, the force of each explosion performs a small proportion of the work which that amount of stored potential is capable of performing. The larger portion of energy is wasted in the exhaust. Man must learn to regenerate the heat which has not performed work. He must also learn to direct his pulsations of accumulated force in a continuous stream tangentially toward the direction of least resistance if he desires to transmit accumulated energy into speed. Conversely, if he desires to transmit power, he must learn to direct his pulsations of accumulated force less tangentially and more directly in the direction of greater resistance. The greater the resistance, the greater the generation of power, and the less its dissipation in speed. The less the resistance, the less the generation of power, and the greater its dissipation in speed. Universal mechanical principles are perfect. They are perpetual in their source of supply, and they are not wasteful. Every particle of energy is used before its final dissipation. Man's supply of energy is as inexhaustible as the universe from which that supply is drawn. Man can so perfect his mechanical principles that he can have as continuous a supply of power to perform his work as this planet has to continue its rotation. Perpetual motion for man need be limited only to the wear and tear of the parts of his machines. The driving power of those machines is inexhaustible. All mass rotates from its local west toward its local east, just as all mass revolves from its local west toward its local east. The local west is a surface direction. It is in the direction in which the sun appears to set. The local east is a surface direction. It is in the direction in which the sun appears to rise. The universal west is the expansion of north, which is ever away from the sun of any system. It is the centrifugal direction of negative discharge. It is the direction in which all planets are spirally threading their way on their return journey from mass to plane. The universal east is a contraction of south, which is ever toward the sun. It is the centripetal direction of positive charge. It is the direction in which all generating light units are spirally threading their way on their outward journey toward the melting pot. Universal power accumulating mechanical principles are as perfect as are universal power distributing principles. Low potential runs the gamut of all the intermediary potentials, with a preponderance of regenerative over degenerative power, until it has found the highest potential position in its wave. It then returns by the reverse of the same principles in easy stages of lessening regeneration and preponderant degeneration. Let us recall that north by the way of east is the direction of generation, and south by the way of west is the direction of degeneration. Imagine the degenerative solar emanations following the centrifugal lines of force of the corona until they become regenerated by following the centripetal lines of force, which attract them to this planet as positive charge. It cannot be too often repeated that the radioactive force is the degenerative force and is centrifugal. Conversely, the general active force is the generative force and is centripetal. In a low potential position where the ratio of general active preponderance is very materially reduced, the balance of radioactive centrifugal force is materially greater in proportion. The pinwheel-like effect of rotation due to centrifugal preponderance gradually gains control. In such a position, force is exerted in tangential directions of gradually lessening resistance from planet to planet, which gradually results in dissipation of power, as expressed in revolution, through speed as expressed in rotation. A study of the accompanying chart on page 221 will make this more clear. On studying the chart, one must bear in mind that the contractive force of attraction is exerted from within, consequently retarding rotation. It is as though the planet were pulling at a rope wound spirally around itself. Now I'm going to stop and put that chart on. This chart is a chart of the early life history of a planet from birth. And I see that I'm not going to have enough time to finish reading this chart, so I will begin the next series of this with this chart and a reading of the page of this chart.